Oh.
We're starting. We're live. You should get online.
Okay. Good evening. This is a special meeting of the Board of Education. Today's Tuesday, February 11th, and it's 6:13 p.m. We're here at City Hall, Conference Room 105. On the agenda tonight is interviews for the vacant Board of Ed seat. We have 8 candidates. Danielle printed something for you already, so when she gets back in, I'll get you guys. We're gonna call the candidates in one at a time, and then each board member will be given one question to ask of the candidates. It must be the same question for each candidate. So I recommend if you don't have it written down, maybe write it down. And each candidate will have 15 minutes, and then we'll call the next one in. So with that said, he can come at the end.
Okay.
Next question, yeah.
Okay.
That way you can get started, not wait. Hi, everyone. Hello. So, my name is. Have 7 of our members here, and I think 1 or 2 online. I should take attendance, I'm sorry. In attendance, Jennifer Perez, Keisha Casimir, Robert Traver, Joseph Kolovic, Christine Baptiste Perez, Andre Woodson, and online we have Willie Medina and Albert Denham. All right. So our first candidate is Alisha Walker. The board members will be asking you one question each. They're gonna be the same question for all candidates. Okay. So I don't know about 15 minutes. Okay. So I'm gonna first ask you if you want to just introduce yourself and anything that really doesn't not on your resume that you want to.
Okay, sure. My name is Alisha Walker, and I'm born and raised in Harlem. But I was born in Harlem and raised in the Bronx. So I'm a Bronx girl. I relocated during COVID with my 6 children. So that's one thing that's definitely not on that resume. I have one child that goes to Housatonic Communities College, and I have another one that's in Morgan State University, and she's entering her sophomore year. My other baby that's in Housatonic, she's doing her junior year and then transferring to Southern. Besides that, I'm on RN. It doesn't show on my resume because I haven't done that in maybe like 8 years because I've been doing other things. I was a registered nurse in South Carolina. I did plastic surgery. I went back to school and I went and became a paralegal. And then I got married, been married for 23 years, and I raised my children. And now I have my own business for the last 4 years. And I'm a PTSO president for Hardin High School. That's not on their resume, but that's Alisha.
We are going to just ask each of them to ask you one question. And I'll get started. Ms. Casimir, do you want to go first?
Hello. Hi. My one question for you is.
Keep it open. Yeah. Thank you.
My one question is, what do you know, or how much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order? How much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order?
Robert's Rules of Order?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of that. Sorry.
But it's okay.
Okay.
Mr. Traver?
In Connecticut, charter schools are considered public schools, just like us. Yet they are not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts. For example, they are not required to accept the same demographics of students as Bridgeport Public Schools. They are allowed to be selective in their admissions and, for lack of a better term, exclusions, resulting in student populations that have less multi-language learners or less SPED students. Two, they are not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their meetings and their resources, etc. Three, Bridgeport Public Schools must pay for their buses and SPED class students, provide the SPED services. Four, their teacher certification requirements are much less stringent. How do you feel about that, and explain why?
Oh, this is going to be an interesting answer because I've worked for charter schools and I know how hard it is to get funding for those things. I'm not against charter. I'm for charter in a sense, and then I'm also for DOE because my children go, of course, to Harding High School and to Columbus and to Dunbar. So I have them in both areas. I give you an example. My daughter does have Morgan right now. She didn't even want to go to school to college, but she went to Capital Prep, and they actually, for her going there, my daughter got accepted to 5 universities. That's a big deal for me, and I'm not downplaying the Board of the Ed. What I'm saying is they have their hardship too. When enrollment is down, it's hard for them to get money from anybody. So I'm for DOE. I think it should be across the board. No child should have to worry about an education anywhere. I think all children are supposed to have a right to what should be free to them, no matter what you go through or who you are or what area you live in. Charter schools are for me, they are universal. I definitely feel there are some use, but do I feel that they are taking some means from us? Absolutely. So I do feel that way.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Question is two parts. One, please tell us what you know about our budget and what needs to be done to balance it. What cut do you recommend to bring it?
A very good question, because I just saw the intermediate superintendent who was talking about, I think, the 7 rules or something. He had a plan of getting things together, and I was sitting here thinking about what could he implement to help change. I know we are in a $32 million deficit, if I'm not mistaken, and we're facing shutting down a couple of schools. And like I said, my son goes to one of them, actually works in one of those schools, and then my grandson actually go to Dunbar. So for me, to revamp it, you need to start from the top. The top would be who's in charge of it and then who's just paying. Because as long as you have a strong foundation, I always believe in that. That's how I run my company. I have a strong foundation. I have a strong team. So what I would do is definitely get the people in here that who are in the trenches with the teachers, who are facing the crisis. And that's some of the parents, and that's some of the teachers, and that's some of the community people. Then sit them down and have a conversation. What can be cut? I can't answer that because we're such in a deficit right now where homelessness in Connecticut is at a high. We have people that's not working. Where we're going to pull the money from? We're going to cut. We don't have jobs as it is. So how are we going to fulfill a 32 gap? And you still got charter schools who's looking for funding that not getting the funding. So you can't worry about them. So how do we fix that? The superintendent needs to look at the balance. What can be removed? Are we going to cut lunches? Are we going to cut insurance? Are we going to cut some salaries with those high figure people? What you're going to cut? Because people can, it's all about give and take balances. So is anyone willing to take a salary cut and not get a six-figure salary right now? Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to say, hey, let's rearrange some of the requirements to get more teachers in here? Let's rearrange some of the requirements to get more students in the door. How can you figure that out? More bodies, more money. You got to have more special ed programs. Some of these parents don't even know what these kids are in this school for. They don't even know what SEL is. So we had them educated and teaching them how to fund those programs. Maybe, just maybe, parents will show up. Maybe the money will come if you would actually educate people on what the roles are needed. Put people in it that understand the job. Just don't hire them because they're your friend or your buddy. Put someone that knows CPAs. Put someone that knows the law. Do that. And then from there, I guess you just got to figure it out as a community. That's my answer.
Thank you.
Mr. Brenner, are you ready for your question?
Yes. Listen, you just say you don't know nothing, you don't understand what's being, Robert rules. What does it mean?
Yes.
Yes, what did, do you understand what's mean the PAG and PTSO, rules that we have in the website? Can you give me the, update, you know,
Mhm.
how far you go with that?
You're gonna,
We have,
you're gonna ask the same question to everyone? Just throwing it out there one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you asking me to tell you what the rules are for the PTSO? And parents, for me, parents is the number one sources. That's our goal. I'm always for the PTSO. It's not about anybody else. It's about the success of the parents. And do I know them verbatim? I don't, because in my mind right now, I'm still nervous, but I am always for the parents. I'm going to mention you because the first day I met you, the first thing you ever told me was, it's nothing else but the parents. Because they're the ones that help their students be successful. So we have to focus on what is going to make them successful to allow their children to be successful. That's what I've always done when I met you. Always put the parents first, and that's my goal, putting parents first.
Mr. Medina,
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Walker, for your time, and I'm going to try to make it brief. In education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Again, in education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
Yes. When I'm in my life right now, I have an opportunity to actually be home with my last child. She's 15. I worked all my life and I realized that I am at a junction of my career that I can actually choose. And I choose to be a mom. I choose to be an entrepreneur. I choose to be a role model. And I've learned being in Hardin High School, working with the education department, that these children, they're sitting here, we're going home to our babies. Some of these babies don't have someone to come home to them. And then when they go home, they don't always have someone that looks like us that smile at them. I have met children that are trying to figure out how to pay for college. So me being on PTSO, I felt my purpose on here was not just to be a mom. And I can't be a biological mom to all these children, but if I could share one thing, is how to be resourceful, how to make ends meet, how you can still go to school, because these children want to go to school. They want to be better. They don't want to be their demographics. And when you feel that emotion from them, how do you not want to teach them to be better, to eat? When you show them how to do things, they're more out there. The more exposure they have, the more brilliant they could become. So my passion is to show them that no matter where you come from, I'm a product of that. I had to live in a shelter with my children. I grew up with a mom that was a single mom who was a teacher and had to live in and out, and I had to help her raise my sister and brother. I don't want my kids to go through that. But these children come in there with no socks, no shoes, and they go to school every day. How can you not sit here and want to make a difference? How could you not? that's the only reason why I'm here. I saw I had an opportunity to be here today. And if I could just say one thing, it would be we got to give them all we got. And whatever this deficit is, we got to stick together as parents, as politicians, as anyone who would listen, that we got to pull us together because parents will stick together.
Thank you. Ms. Baptiste?
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district and has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think the school district has been failing for the last 25 years? What do you think will turn this around?
I'm old school, and that's a very good question. No dig to anyone that's younger, but I feel like my generation, when we went to school, we had teachers that taught us how to write cursive, how to cook, how to do what took to go home, how to sit down and do homework. We had teachers that knew our names, that understood everything that happened to us. I think now teachers are not so invested as the teachers that were 20 years ago. I think some of them got into this thinking it was all roses and that apple on the desk, and it's not. I have hired teachers that I interviewed, and going from me to the principal, she took the right turn, a left turn, and went to the highway and was like, it's not for me. And that's insane, because what did you think was going to happen? You come into this demographics, you got to deal with all personalities. That's everybody. So for me, I think what we can change is keep the requirements, keep the certificates, keep the certification, keep all of those things in place. Because with those in place, you're gonna filter out the teachers that are just looking for money and teachers that want to teach. And I don't know who gets into teaching looking for money. I've never heard of that, but there's some people that I have seen since COVID that would go from school to school to school to school. I worked at Capital Prep. And I've seen people jump from school to school to school to school. This school gave me 110. Okay, I can match this with 120. You can't do that. Children need consistency. Teachers cannot be late, cannot be absent. They need to dress appropriately. You have to start from the bottom. We have to call each other by our last name, Ms. Perez. How are you? You get what I'm saying? When you address each other, children look at that, how we talk to each other, how we dress when we come to work. How do you think a child's going to see us looking like we just rolled out of bed and take us as professionals, sitting in jeans? But yeah, you're telling them you got to be better than that. But you look less than that. So for me, if we start building a foundation where we could get teachers that are certified in their fields, we could get teachers that are certified in SPED, that are also certified in SEL. When we have the demographic of teachers that don't matter who's in the classroom talking to the students and learning their name, knowing the parents, don't just call a parent and complain. Talk about good things, not just bad things. Pull them in the classroom, entertain them, have them for book reading, do something with that. That's how you can control that. That's how you can monitor that. Because when you have teachers that are in the classroom and not absent every 3 days or on medical leave, you have someone that is consistent. And teachers don't like that. Yes, they go through a lot. We do know that. We know that they don't have personal lives that take the work home. But you know what? You're here. You're here to be here for a reason. And that's to educate someone's child. You want someone to educate your child, so you need to do the same here. And we just got to have that standard universal.
Business owner in North Carolina. How do you feel about unions?
I actually like union. I hate when, I'm not gonna say hate. Hate is a harsh word. When some charter schools don't have unions. So when you hire an HR person, you're the union rep. So I kind of like unions when you have someone to go to and they can actually tell you your rights, because I feel people have rights. I feel that people should be also held accountable for what their actions are. I feel that unions should be in place. I think it gives structure. I think it gives order. I think it gives fairness. I think it gives employers an opportunity to know that you also have to play fair. You also going to be held accountable. So you got to be mindful of how you treat your staff. I think unions make people realize that. So I do feel like in that sense, it's very necessary, because there's some employers that get away with everything, and that's not right.
And the final question is going to be, how would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular but are in the best interest?
I'm gonna give you an example about that. If you don't mind, I'll be real quick. This year I made a promise to myself. You know, those New Year's resolutions. I don't do New Year's resolutions, right? And never stick. But I promised myself this year that I'm gonna handle difficult things. I don't like having difficult conversations. You know, in HR, you gotta fire people. You gotta, even if you like them. That's why I don't become friends with nobody. I stick to that's why I always said the last name matters. Because when I walk out that door, I'm Alisha. The reason why I'm saying this to you is because I had to make a difficult decision, which was I needed to expand my palette a little bit when it came to what I was looking for. And I saw this online at 3:00 in the morning. And the most difficult thing for me was, should I make that decision to send it? And I sent it at 3 in the morning. And that may not be a hard decision, but for me, it was a hard decision because that's out of my comfort. Because I never did that. Because I would have thought, me sitting here interviewing with you, I would have never thought that. But what would be the worst thing that could happen? I come interview and then I don't get selected, but I went, I tried it, and it was something new, it was something exciting, and I'm scared to death. But that was my challenge. And the way I say we face this challenge is it's going to be difficult. Everyone, this conversation is going to be difficult. How we save these schools. But what is more difficult is looking at these children and not having a place for them. So what is the answer for that? You got to figure that out. We got to move some numbers around. And I'm sure we can without putting anybody in a difficult situation. But those hard conversations has to be had. Those salaries have to be cut. Whatever needs to be done, we need to make that happen. And unfortunately, and I'm not going to say it in a bad way, but hard conversations is something that we have to have. And being in business, that happens all the time. I hire my children and I tell them, you're the one I'm looking at. You represent me. Can't have you messing me when it's your name on that building. So you act up. Mommy's not going to protect you. I'm going to fire you just like I would fire someone that was stealing from me, because you are the one that represents me. And if someone sees you doing that, then they're going to feel that they could do it too. And I feel like that's what schools need to look at. You can't let one do it and not let the others, because that's what I hear a lot. You know, going in and listen to the teachers talk about so-and-so did this. Take care of you. Stop worrying about somebody else's name. You have your job. You have your job. You have your job. Everybody here is a collective. I hear when someone says stay in your lane, because we're all here for a reason. You bring something to the table. You bring something to the table. And when we talk about it, let's talk about it. You don't know everything. So let's learn. I think if we put all that together and we talk and have those hard conversations without displacing anybody, I've always says it's just the family, it's parents, it's us making it right. And I think that's why I'm supposed to be in this seat today. Thank you for having me. I will. I'll make sure. Think how hard it is. I figured that's not right. You came here because I figured. Nice to meet you, all of you. Have a good night.
Safe night.
And clear on. John Jacob, come on, John. Let's say what the actual degree is she had. Is it?
Oh, you're gonna move here.
Same question. Okay. It's not like that, so. And this is right.
Mr. Mazzaro, Jane Mazzaro, senior. What's gonna happen is we're gonna each ask you one question. It's gonna be the same questions that we asked the previous candidate. Ms. Casimir? Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. He introduced himself. I forgot that word.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's right.
he introduced himself.
My name is James Mazzaro Senior, live at 354 Gregory Street, Bridgeport, Connecticut. I just retired from the Board of Education for 29 years in the city. Also a Bridgeport Fire Commissioner. I'm on the DC 131st District, NRZ. Work. Do a lot of civilian stuff in the city. South end of Bridgeport. And I'm alumni from Bassett High School.
My one question to you is, how much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order?
Robert's Rules of Order, I was a union president for NAGE. We followed the state guidelines to that, and sitting as a commissioner in the Bridgeport Fire Department, we followed the same rules as everybody else with chain of command, motions, and followed the procedures. And I oversee, as a commissioner, we oversee $35 million in bond money for firefighters. So when we do have a president, a chairperson, and I'm one of the senior members of 15 years, and we do follow the Roger rules of procedures of whenever there's a motion come up and follow the procedures of the rules.
Thank you very much.
Well,
In Connecticut, charter schools are considered public schools just like us. Yet they are not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts. For example, they are not required to accept the same demographics of students as Bridgeport Public Schools. They are allowed to be selective in their admissions and, for lack of a better word, exclusions, resulting in student populations that have less multi-language learners or less special ed students. 2, they are not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their board meetings, resources, etc. 3, Bridgeport Public Schools must pay for their buses and their special ed. And 4, their teacher certification requirements are much less stringent.
yes.
How do you feel about this? And I explain how you feel, why you feel that way.
Well, again, charter schools is concern to the Board of Ed because of the funding. We have to protect our youth in the city. They're Bridgeport residents. Going to charter schools is the parents' decision, but for going to charter schools and not having the same criteria that what we have, especially this qualification of teachers, it's subject to, again, this board here has their board and they just do whatever they want. It's like you said, they don't follow the guidelines of the state of Connecticut, and that's where they can pick and choose who they want. And if you look at most of the charter schools, it's more of the athletic part of it. And these handpicked kids to go to the schools instead of just getting everybody going to those schools. I think the Bridgeport Board of Education schools do a great job on it. The charter schools get funding through the state of how they, or through their big donation people. And we foot the bill of transportation that makes sure the kids go to school and fed. I always wanted to know is if we put them into paying them for busing, do we get reimbursed for the food that we're paying out to, that they go to the charter schools? So that was my always concern when I hear that. If we talk about charter schools, we only talk about busing. Where's the money that feeds the kids? Who pays for that? If we're paying for their busing, are we also paying for their food that they're getting from the school or that's on their own? So that's my big concern about as right now, our money situation, where that money's going.
Mr. Benjamin?
So how are you?
Yeah, sorry.
It's not a given thing.
Okay.
It's just a question you answer, just explain your feelings and.
Okay.
My question for you is, what do you know about PTSO bylaws? And what change do you think can be learned from them and implemented?
I don't know if you asked that second part earlier. I think you just asked the first part.
You, well, not exactly, because you're almost the same and trying to fix the question for everyone. Because you remember, I just got here, and I just know the question just very fast.
I think like.
Right, so-
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah, they
that's,
keep it-
that's the bylaw, that's what
I think I should keep that first part though. Because I think you asked that second part. I believe you asked the second part.
as per the second, I was, what's she gonna learn it from? You can check, you go back, you can, I asked her that question, but she was gonna learn.
Trying to think, I think you may have mentioned rules. The context was a little earlier than it was.
Let's skip you for now. You look for that?
I would need a recess
Okay.
of minutes.
All right, you guys want to go recess for that? Cause I don't know if that was the same question.
It wasn't the same question, but can we go through and then have a recess?
So, Mr. Call.
Yes, sir. Yes, my question is two parts. One, please tell us what you know about the budget and what needs to be done to balance it. What cuts would you recommend to bring it to balance?
Oh, the first is the budget is again, very strenuous for you guys and the staffing. I've been following through going to meetings and look at the deficit. And again, you see me speak at meetings and, we have to stick together to go fight for a budget. And I have wanted to say, and I left, but I was shut up short, is that remember COVID-19 when Governor Lamont was in Hartford, the state employees were upset because COVID-19. What did they do? Rally, they put it in front, they protest, they got what they were looking for. We have to do the same thing to fight for our children, the youth of Bridgeport, to get the funding that we have to have. City. Budget cuts, I specified as a resident and as a employee that we always don't have to go after the employee and that classification to be eliminated. There's things in the budget that we can look at and say, why do we need to keep doing this and it's not benefiting us this? There's a lot of things that we have not seen through a budget that we can eliminate, not by the quality of work that we have, but let's see quality of, again, I don't want to, like I said before, Sonatrol. Sonatrol in the city of Bridgeport that monitors our school system and our buildings. We have the Fusion Center and we have the EOC that monitors the same thing. So if that alarm goes off right now, guess what? It goes to Sonatrol, to Alabama, back at the Fusion Center where it could be already dropped off. So if you look at that budget, like I've been trying to ask, it's three figures every year that we can save that and put it into positions that we don't need to cut for our staff and for our pupils getting hurt, like missing something out. So I think I can answer both those at the same time. Again, it's a tough battle because we're not getting help on both sides. Well, on both sides of the state and the city. If hopefully get on and put our heads together, how we can work together, getting this done through networking each other and say, listen, here's our fight. This is what we got to go after. Budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Medina? No, I'm-
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. So in education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Again, in the education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. Well, once I put my name in, I went into the candidate book tab, and the actual questions of candidate. The first one is number one, what motivates you? Well, my mother was Marjorie Swartz. She was an advocate for the Bridgeport school system for over 40 years. That's where I learned and grew up of how to give back into the city. So again, she was an advocate, and the story in my bio is that my two other brothers didn't know what my mother and I didn't know at the younger age what she was doing every Saturday morning. She would be going to Pearl. She would be going to a Board of Ed meeting. She would be going to this. After my mother had passed away, we didn't know what all of her accolades were, what she did in the community, outside the community. There was a meeting that Torres was there. He didn't know that the PAC used to travel to different cities locally and outside to get information to come back into our group and say, hey, this is what this town's doing, this is what this town, and that's what I've been hearing with the superintendent is let's find out what other towns are doing to do that. We had a foundation in Bridgeport. It was the PAC, the district PAC. We had a lot of key members. And my mother, like God rest her soul, with her other two friends, Margie Powell and Marty Calderon, they were the M&M girls. And there was a Board of Ed meeting. They were sitting right up in front, asking all the questions that where you normally see parents and so forth. And they wasn't coming to just any other meeting. They were there every night that there was a Board of Ed meeting. And that's where I've been going. And I couldn't say that much is because I was quiet because I was a union president. And I couldn't speak on behalf of my staff because I was part of the union. Well, Mr. Medina, and again, that's where I have the drive, I have the knowledge of seeing my mother how it works. I go to board meetings, I listen, I speak now because I'm retired. I have an open voice now, and it comes out. And hopefully that when I speak, people can say, hey, let's try that, and not say, get the blinders on or the railroads. The railroads. Let's get that out of here. Let's just go outside the box. That's, as we say with accountability, this is our accountability right here. And you got my 110% on this board if I get accepted. Thank you.
Ms. Matthews.
Thank you very much.
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district and has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think the school district has been failing for the last 25 years? And what do you think will turn it around?
Well, as a student, former student, my son over there is a former student, graduated Bassett High School. As they said, Bassett's the lowest high school of failures around. Associate's degree in criminal justice, went to university. I don't think we failed. I think that we have to have more programs that will help our kids. Again, that chair is the same. The only thing is different is when that child sits in that chair. Does he want to learn or he doesn't want to learn? That is the setback that happens. But we don't have the little pockets that can take that child out and sit down that one-on-one and say, what do you need? What is your flaws that we can help you? So that I don't think if we fail, because I'm a graduate of Bassett High School. I went to school. I didn't like it. I had to come back to help my mom. I own my own business, Social Security, since 2006 as a special ed student. Okay. There's things that when you see those teachers, those are the ones that pulled you to the side and helped you. So I think we got to give more kudos to our teachers that are helping our students. There are so many kids, let me say that, but kids that went to school that are adults now, that are in this community, that I want to bring to the board and see what they do. I coach American Legion. I have police officers. I have firefighters. I have Marines, military guys that came from a Bridgeport Public School. So we're not failing. It's that you have to have the interest of learning. If you don't have it, you can't blame that teacher. You gotta blame that individual, but you gotta help that individual. Those are the teachers and staff that say, hey, come here, let's see what you can. Guidance counselor was a big thing. God rest his soul, Mr. Joyce. I flunked English as my senior class. Guess what he did? He kicked the garbage can. You better get your mother here and we gotta talk. They made me take a test over and passed it. I went to school. So again, to this board and whoever's watching, the Bridgeport school doesn't fail. It's just that we don't have enough things to put in place to make ourselves better. We're good because if you look and you see around in the city, look at our kids. It's just not bastard kids. You got party. Look at how many guys went, like someone said in a meeting, NFL stars, and then NBA stars. Coming from where? A Bridgeport public school. Again, it's the person, individual that sits in this chair that wants to move forward. And I think we have to look out to give avenues for these kids to get ahead. So I don't think we're failing. I know we don't have enough money to do different things, but yesterday at the meeting, if we got the $50 million, we'd be all right for getting these programs and these stuff for kids. But right now we can't. That's the failing is because people up in Hartford and I know Ross Street is not helping where it's supposed to be.
That you age
President.
How do you feel about the new
Unions? As an age president, and we have 500 plus members. I have 300 on the Board of Ed side, and I have 200 on the city side. Unions protect workers, or right now, the Jimenez decision, I don't know if anybody knows about the Jimenez decision, that you could be in the union, but you don't have to pay union dues. You still be represented. Any discipline that I have many cases on, it's a protocol, progressive discipline. We can't just go out and say, you made a mistake, you're fired. Why did he do something wrong? And there's a lot of things that management doesn't see what they do wrong. I have put together as the union president for all the unions. I put a thing to meet with the mayor, with Tom Gold, that we never had in the city history before. To see when you have your staff meeting and you have our meeting. It says, how come, I'm going to use Mr. Benham, how come he's the city maintenance guy? How come there's 30 grievances? What is the problem there? Is it the problem with the worker or the problem of the management? Because we don't never hear that. So that's where the union comes with. There's times that, unions go out and help the community. That's what I do. That's why I took the big responsibility for 8 years in the city of Bridgeport. We had a great contract in the city and again, looking for cuts. Again, I'd rather go after product that I can eliminate that, not this again. Because if you eliminate the job, guess what? 70% of that guy works in the city of Bridgeport. His child goes to school. He's laid off. Guess what? He's still got to fund his unemployment. You know that, right? We got to fund his unemployment. He has to pay his other benefits, but we're still paying not that whole full percent, but we're paying something that for that guy to stay home when we can use them still in the city. So that's what the union's all about. Yep.
How would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular, but are in the best interest of students?
Well, again, sitting in my shoes, there was always discipline, and I'll tell you my contract. We negotiated a 13.25 raise. We had to give up overtime, 8 hours to 40, and holiday pay. Now, some of my members were upset. Some of my members were not because they were getting something else in the package. So in that contract, we negotiated a 15-day sick day instead of 10. We got our rollback for insurance. Now here, while I'm speaking this now, have your ears open because this affected the Board of Ed. But no one from the maintenance, from the HR, notifying the Board of Ed what was going on until the contract was signed and all of a sudden you gotta pay back. So we rolled back from 33 and a quarter to everybody 25%. But that means what? You had to give a retro back to the employee. We got 15 days of, no, excuse me, we got 4 days of personal time. You can't roll it over. You have to use it. Niece and nephews, because again, a lot of city workers that mom and dad is gone, but aunts and uncles are taking care of niece and nephews that we had to give a niece and nephew bereavement because we never had it. So this is where that's all about.
We'll take a brief recess to get the question right.
Yeah, sure.
Can we vote on that? All in favor?
Then you have motion in the proper second.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Is there a motion?
To take a recess for 5 or 10 minutes.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Ms. Casimir. All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
So we're gonna get a brief recess. You can hang on.
Yes.
We're back from the recess. Mr. Benjamin, you guys questions?
You understand the tag and KPSO rules and the website, and you give our update and how far you go with that.
Well, again, as I was an employee of the Board of Education working at Bassett, I said my son went to Bassett. I was the PTSO president for him and my other son James 4 years. They went to school here. Mr. Fellican was our PTSO president back then. So I saw what he was doing, and when my kids went, his daughters graduated. There's no one that wanted to fill the parents PTSO. So Miss Hennessy and Mr. Remy asked me to do it because my 2 boys went to school there, and I said yes. And I took the responsibility to run the PTSO at Bassett High School for 4 years. We had colleges come in, we had vendors that come in. We had a lot of things going on again. In the PTSO, in the high school is different from a grammar school. You have more turnout in the grammar school than the high school because kids think when they go to high school, I don't need mom or dad to come to the school. You do, because you got to know what's going on. As you notice, if you ever go to report card conferences, when there's a report card conference in the high school, who do you see there? Mom and dad. But at a PTSO meeting, you hardly get everybody there. So that's where I would like to see more enhance of getting the high school PTS to go to the grammar schools in your district. So if Bassett has a PTSO meeting at Roosevelt School, that PTSO group should go to Roosevelt and say, who are we? Because after 8th grade, guess what? You may be going to Bassett, or if you're going to go to Bullet Havens or what, but 95% you're going to go to Bassett. So there's no interaction with the PTSO that way. I know the rules and regulations of the money, where it goes through. It belongs to the parents. The principal has the money in the account that what you do with it. You want to have a thing for our parents. That's who you got to go through. The city has vendors that we use. We just can't use anybody off the street unless it goes through downtown, because you don't want to get a catch-22 that you pay this guy all of a sudden, hook this guy getting money from the school system. So again, I did 4 years at Bassett. Working as a guard too, I would go to other schools to work in overtime. And again, you see the schools are 300 parents in there. And it's amazing how different groups have bigger turnouts than the most. The rules, we do have those rules. And again, it wasn't that strenuous in high school because you hardly get 200 to 300 people at your event. You probably get 100 or something at there to show the kids, parents, what we're offering in the schools. Again, being the PTSO president or in the members, you get guidance counselor from the universities coming down to show what college is all about. Or if you don't go to college, it could be auto mechanic guy come in, something different than, again, everybody's not college ready. There's a lot of things that we can do also with the kids with the PTSO, but the problem is in the city is I don't see our high school kids' parents coming because the kids don't want them to go. And I think they feel more embarrassed than their mother or father going. Because again, I've been at most of the meetings since probably about 10 at a high school, where it shouldn't be. You go to a grammar school, they got functions, there's about 150 at there because they're doing more things, because what? It's for the youth. And then it's more handled with the little kids than an older kid. So that's my thing with PTSO. And again, I use my mother, for example, again. She charted the trend in Bridgeport. She was the first, Martha Calderon with the uniforms. They were the first ones to put the uniforms on the map for Bridgeport Public Schools. So it is just waiting to see what happens. If I get it, I really appreciate it. If not, I will still be at meetings supporting you guys and the students of what they need in the city of Bridgeport. So I thank you again for having me here and listen to my livelihood story of me being a Bridgeport Public School student. What's that?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I was already like, you know, say.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. Our next candidate is Eric Torres. What's gonna happen is each of the board members is gonna ask you one question, the same question everybody else is getting.
Okay.
And then
All right.
probably give you some opportunity to, share about yourself. That's not your resume that you want to share,
Okay.
if you want.
Sure. So, born and raised in Bridgeport, graduated from Central High School back in 1990 something. 1900s feels like it was that long ago, but definitely an associate pastor here at a local church. Been very involved in the community. I run the Bridgeport Marine Toys for Tots. We do a lot of distribution to children in the community with toys. Been heavily involved with backpack give back programs. And just a real advocate for our city and our students and our children. What I love to do, I love to travel, love to see different places around the world. I'm a dreamer. I grew up very poor, struggled a lot, had a lot of issues at home. Never thought opportunities would present themselves the way they are to me today. Because of the sacrifices we made, the decisions that were made, the ability, the desire to want to change. It really just took one mentor, someone who came alongside me to empower me and encourage me and shifted the trajectory of my life. And I truly believe in the model, the work that I do, that no one gets there alone. So I live my life by that. I didn't get where I am today alone. And I believe that our students as well can't get where they need to get to alone.
This is Kathleen Third.
Hello.
Hello.
How much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order?
I know enough. I have served on the board for the Bridgeport Public Library in the past. I feel like I probably could learn a little more. I don't want to deny that I have it all down packed, but watching the board meetings online and watching and coming in person, I see that there is room for me to grow and to learn. And so I know just about a lot of the discussions and the voting and things such as that, but definitely could use some more training in that area. But I don't think it's a flaw or an area that I can't grow in or learn quickly.
Thank you.
Mr. Traver.
Good evening.
Connecticut charter schools are considered public schools just like us. Yet they're not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts. For example, they're not required to accept the same demographics of students as Bridgeport Public Schools. They're allowed to be selective in their admissions and, for lack of a better term, exclusions, resulting in a student population that have less multi-language learners or less special ed students. Two, they're not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their board meetings, resources they receive, or et cetera. Three, Bridgeport Public Schools must pay for their buses and special ed classes. And four, their teacher certification requirements are much less stringent. How do you feel about that, and explain why?
I think the accountability there is a true struggle because our students don't necessarily have the services. And then we talk about funding and where does funding go? We know that when funding goes to charter schools, our public students are losing also on funding and money given to the students here in our district. So I think that it is a significant struggle. I also think that our students, my experience has been, are underserved at times in charter schools, especially those that are in special education. Those who are EL learners at times are underserved. But I think it is an injustice. I think our district deserves additional dollars that they aren't getting and do need. And whenever dollars come out of the public school, which is already facing drastic cuts and issues and challenges, it limits our ability to serve our students the same way that they need to be served.
Do you understand the packet PTSO rules on the website? Can you give me an update on how far you can go with that?
Yes. So I've had experience working with PTSOs. I was a former teacher in Bridgeport. So I taught 3rd and 4th grade at Tisdale School. So I had the privilege of working with the PTSO president there. And then also as a community provider, I've had the privilege of working with the PTSO president. We understand that the money comes from Title I funds. We do know that the school may manage it and even act as a fiduciary, but the principal doesn't have the ability to decide where those funds go. We know that PTSO is all about parent engagement. If you are a teacher, if you are, you have to be a parent to lead. So you have to be president, you have to have the vice president, you have to have the secretary, and the money has to all be about parent engagement. Engaging parents, which is basically comes back to educating parents, empowering parents, encouraging parents, because we know that knowledge is power, and I've seen the great effects and the great work that PTSOs have done in the schools.
Mrs. Calvin.
Mr. Torres. Question is two parts. One, please tell us what you know about the budget and what needs to be done to balance it, and what cuts would you recommend in order to bring the budget into balance?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I mean, honestly, I believe the budget deficit has been lowered over time from what I've been seeing because of the cuts, right? Whether it's cuts to staff, personnel, or staff cutting programs, the cuts have been real, but they have to be made. There are real challenges that are facing our students and our district. So I think the last time I saw was somewhere around 20-some million dollars deficit that we're facing. And so that's a real challenge. I think really just looking at programs and looking at positions and really assessing whether or not they are, doing what they're supposed to do. Are they benefiting our students? Are we gaining the most from these programs? Are students benefiting from these programs? How effective or ineffective are they? And what will be the impact at the classroom level? We know that the district started at the top and are working their way down. But we know that I think cutting from the top, looking at programming, assessing programs, when what is the benefit, what isn't a benefit, what we need to remove. I think the last cuts always need to be the ones in the classroom that are providing direct services to our students. As a program director for a nonprofit organization, I understand what it is to have to make cuts. I understand what it is to have to do a risk assessment. I understand what it is to have to review your finances and understand your budget. Understand the difficult decisions that have to be made, but the reality of the matter is that the kids are the ones that matter most. So I think whenever we make a decision, we have to ask, how is it going to impact the children, the students? So again, I would come back to programs, the effectiveness of those programs, looking at positions, and having to make tough calls.
Mr. Medina's online.
Thank you very much. In education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Once again, in education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
Great question. So being a former educator, working in the district for 7 years as a teacher, 3rd, 4th grade, but also being a paraprofessional, being an in-school suspension officer, working in special education, I see the sacrifices that our teachers make. And I think the board recognizes that and has acknowledged that multiple times. I think what motivates me is knowing the sacrifices that are made with such little resources. That motivates me. The sacrifices that teachers make day in and day out to ensure that their students are not only being educated, but are being provided with services that the district necessarily can't provide. When I was a former teacher, I was holding Christmas parties in the classroom, setting up a tree, having presents underneath it, serving kids food, making sure kids had sneakers, socks, a jacket. Knowing those things and the sacrifices that teachers are making, it's empowered me. And then most recently, it's just even working with the district and collaborating with the superintendent and attending one of the forums and having a discussion about, how do we fill in some of the gaps that we're experiencing with community providers, and then getting a call and saying, hey, let's talk about forming a community provider committee. and coming together. So just filling in some of those gaps is just really motivating me and giving me the drive to ensure that our teachers have the support, our students have the support, and I can be a voice, I can be of support, I can be of assistance to be able to see change happen here in the district.
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district and has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think this school district is failing for the last 25 years? And what do you think will turn it around? Turn this around?
Really honestly, I think it's money. And, I hate to say that it is, but it is, right? We had a little bit of money because I don't think the issue is teachers don't care. I don't think the issue is that board members don't care. The reality is that we don't have the money to be able to supply all of the things that the kids need, what our schools need, what our students need. And I think it comes back to advocacy. I think it comes back to being a voice. I think it comes back to fighting in places and in arenas and in rings we need to fight in to ensure that the money comes. And being comfortable with understanding you're not always going to be the most liked person in the room. You're not going to always be the most seen person in the room. But sometimes you got to ensure that you're the one that's heard in the room. And that means sometimes you have to open up your mouth. So I think advocacy, I think being present, I think showing up, I think being a resource. I always say, just because my opinion might not be your opinion, it doesn't make it the wrong opinion or the wrong thought or the wrong idea. So I think shaking the tree until you can't shake it anymore, then, go dig somewhere and you can't find anything as you're digging, but keep looking. I think it takes being present. I think it takes showing up. I think it takes advocacy. I think it takes not only being seen, but being heard and finding those spaces and looking for those resources and serve as a sounding board. So I think, that's kind of where I'm at.
You're a former teacher. How do you feel about the union?
Unions are good. And I will say this, I've seen it on both sides. So I've been covered and protected by the union as a former teacher. And then also as a community provider, I've seen challenges of trying to get in and provide some level of support for students because there is some red tape and there are some, union expectations with regards to contracts and what we can say yes to and what we can't say no, and writing that fine line. So I think unions are important. I think unions are good. I think they are as well a sounding board for teachers. And I think that they are worthy of having a seat at the table because sometimes they are not only the sounding board, they're the mouthpiece for the teachers. And when there's room for them not to be heard or they aren't being heard, I think that the unions step in so that they can be heard. And I think when we talk about contracts and bargaining agreements, all of those things are important, especially with such a large district as Bridgeport.
Final question. How would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular but are in the best interest of students?
Yes. So as again, running a nonprofit in Bridgeport, I have to make difficult decisions all the time. Whether or not we're going to meet budget this year, whether or not we've raised enough funds. Is the freeze real? Is it not real? Will grants stop? Will grants come in? So I have to make difficult decisions. I think when making difficult decisions, I think transparency is important. I think vulnerability is important. I think communication is important. And when you're missing those things, it leaves room for people to become offended. It leaves room for people to become hurt. So I think really making sure you have your ducks in a row, making sure before you present, before you communicate, that you're communicating what really needs to be communicated, but it's also communicated from the heart because people receive differently when things are communicated from the heart. I say this, I think you can give information, but before you give information, you have to have communication. When you have appropriate communication, good communication is less room for miscommunication, and that brings about transformation. So I think the district has a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there is definitely room for growth, but I'm clear that tough decisions have to be made. But our goal, and I said it at the forum, I said, we know the wound is real, but what we're trying to do is prevent an infection. And I think that it is possible. So it would be my honor to serve on the board in labor, in love with the board, serve our students I've done this in various capacities. This would be a new one, but I'm most certainly invested in the lives of our young people for over 20+ years. Understand I'm not going anywhere, so either way, you'll see me again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you. Very good one. Yeah, I'll say good one. Thank you. Good night. You too. Thank you. Oh, my son was.
Our next candidate is Marissa Jimenez. And what's gonna happen is I'm gonna give you a chance to tell us about yourself. And then we'll question, same question that everybody else has gotten. Answer that. So first, and you. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to chat with us today and our next doing. So again, my name is Marissa Jimenez. I was born in Puerto Rico, moved to Bridgeport when I was 6 years old. So I had the opportunity of calling Bridgeport my home my entire life. As a Bridgeport resident, I have lived in many different locations, mostly on the west side, mostly on the Hollow. My very first job was working for a Lighthouse program. Columbus School was my very first assignment. So I've always had a very deep roots in Bridgeport. First college I went to was Tonic, graduated with my associates. High school, I went to Bullard Havens. When we first came from Puerto Rico, we moved over here. My first school I ever attended was Roosevelt School. So I have attended Bridgeport Public Schools. I've had many experiences here throughout my life in the city of Bridgeport, and I know what the community needs. I'm still very deeply rooted in the city of Bridgeport. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to give back to the community, to help out the community. One of the things that, when we first moved here, my parents didn't know English. So I had to learn English very quickly. My parents didn't know how to advocate for us. So we kind of had to figure things out as we went. So that's something that, if given the opportunity as a board member, that I would appreciate doing for those same parents, like my parents, who didn't know where to go to get answers. So that's truly my motivation behind being here this afternoon.
So, how much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order?
So I will say I'm not an expert on it by any means, but I do know that it is a procedure on how to handle meetings. So mostly about equality, proper discussion. In my perspective, it's almost like professionalism around hosting a meeting.
Thank you.
In Connecticut, charter schools are considered public schools, just like Bridgeport Public Schools. Yet they are not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts. For example, they are not required to accept the same demographics as Bridgeport Public Schools. They are allowed to be selective in their admissions and, for lack of a better term, exclusions, resulting in student populations that have less multi-language learners and less special ed students. 2, they are not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their board meetings, resources, etc. 3, Bridgeport Public Schools must pay for their buses and special ed classes or student needs. 3, Bridgeport Public Schools, oh, I'm sorry, I just said that. 4, their teacher certification requirements are much less stringent. How do you feel about that, and explain why?
So in our community, at least, a lot of folks like charter schools because historically, you know, your kid will have greater education. They'll have a step forward, if you will. However, I feel like that's a misconception. I don't I don't appreciate the fact that there are a different set of rules. If there's a set of rules for the Bridgeport Public Schools, there should be for the charters as well. They should be reviewed and held to the same standards. So in my perspective, I'm not anti-charter schools, but I do think that there needs to be some work to be done so that they can be both measured at the same playing field. Specifically, I do know that some funds from the Bridgeport Public Schools do go to charter schools. The mere fact that we're funding some of that, however, they do not need to adhere to the same rules, in my perspective, is not fair.
Mr. Benton.
Do you understand the PAC and PTSO rules on the website? Can you give me an update in how far you go with that?
So this is my first year being a PAC member. So I am very familiar. I won't say I know all the PAC rules, but I will say in the few meetings that I have attended, I did find it kind of daunting that some schools don't even use all their PAC funding. So I believe that there needs to be training to ensure that those schools that are not using all the funding spend it. Especially because you can use it for so much fun for the kids. It kind of helps enrich that sense of community between the teachers, the students, and the parents within the school. So that's first. And then the second item that I also recently learned was that a few years ago, many years ago, there used to be lessons learned. So there was information sharing between different districts, and that has stopped. So that would be something nice to reincorporate.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Question is two parts. Please tell us what you know about the budget and what needs to be done to balance it. What cuts would you recommend to bring the budget into balance?
The budget has been a very hot topic the past few months. I do know that we are in a deficit, and it's come from many years of underfunding the city of Bridgeport's public schools. I will say there are ways where we can cut, I would say. So I know that there's a lot of duplicate programs that have been out there. And I know you guys are working to identify those and get rid of them. I believe you voted on that last night on it. So that's step one, but in reality, what I feel needs to happen even further is how did we allow that to happen to begin with? There needs to be check and balances to make sure that whatever programs we currently have are properly documented. So if there's an idea that comes up that says, hey, it would be nice if we could have a math curriculum that does this, we can go right to that guide or that wherever it's documented to say, hey, we already have something that does that. So that would help mitigate this problem from re-arising in the future. I will say I do have some experience in funding cuts in my own job. I used to run the low-income weatherization program for my current employer, and the state in 2018 decided, hey, we have a deficit. We're going to take your money. So here I am, $150 million short for weatherization services, not just for low-income residential customers, also for commercial customers, small businesses. we had to make very difficult decisions that you all will have to make in the very short term. So that's something that we ended up having to do, from having to weatherize 10,000 homes. I had to cut down the amount of customers we had to serve by 5,600. So in short, we ended up having very long waiting lists, but something I do have experience with that. Looking at the budget, where can we cut? And then making those hard decisions no one wants to make truly. We ended up having to do a lot of layoffs, which ended up resulting in major market sector-wide imbalance. People refused to work with us because there was no certainty that their jobs were guaranteed. So those are all things that I have experience with, and knowing what you guys are gonna have to go through. You guys all have to do the same, and I'm prepared to help with that.
Thank you. And Mr. Medina online.
Thank you very much. In education, is there any particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Again, in education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
What initially motivated me early in the year was the pre-K, not curriculum, but the specials, where from one day to the other, from June of 2024 to August of 2024, they mysteriously just stopped happening. So that truly helped motivate me to just keep an eye on what's happening. It really motivated me to be more active in my kids' education. Before, I just send them to school. They're learning their shapes, they're learning their colors. I think this is normal. I was really disengaged because I thought things were happening the way they were supposed to. But now, having that shortfall early in the fall in August, I've realized, I need to pay closer attention to this and really advocate not just for my kids, but for the kids of the district. There's many times I chat with parents in the hallway and they don't know where to go to. So I think I can be a voice for them.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district and has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think this school district is failing, has been failing for the last 25 years? And what do you think would turn it around?
So, like I mentioned earlier, in my belief, the real reason why Bridgeport is quote unquote failing is because of lack of funding. Up in Hartford, there doesn't really seem to be a desire to properly fund our schools, and not just our schools, but many inner city schools. So I believe with the proper budget cuts, we can level out our existing budget with that currently has deficits, but also we need to advocate, really chat with the governor. And I know Dr. Avery's been working on that, but we need to be very vocal and let the governor know, hey, we're here, we matter too, and we need funding increase.
Mr. Woodson?
How do you feel about unions?
Union. So my current employer has a very strong and active union. I generally feel okay with unions. I think they advocate great for their staff. And I will say we have to read their union contracts very diligently. I know and I realize you can't just ask anyone that's a union member, hey, can you do this for me? You first have to read those contracts. So at first glance, I've never had a union problem at my current employer either. So I've worked very well with them.
The final question is, how would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular, but are in the best interest of students?
So I like to do very simple pros and cons. So with the budget deficit, well, the rating of the funds, because that's really what happened to us in our weatherization department, we really had to make difficult decisions which meant we had about 300 crews operating throughout the entire state. That meant that we had to reduce roughly 2/3 of our workforce. It wasn't made lightly, and the worst of it, we had to do it right after the holidays in January, which was awful. And even to this day, I don't like that decision, never did. It had to be made. We didn't have the money. There was no way the company could make that shortfall. So what we ended up doing was, yes, we made the cuts. We had to lay off tons of people after the holidays, but we ended up advocating the same that I'm asking Bridgeport Public Schools to do here with the state and letting them know, hey, you took $150 million from us. This is what that meant. This meant that there was a GDP, gross domestic product index dropped by 1.5% because people are not buying insulation, lighting, everything that we needed to do our work as a result, because we had to reduce the amount of work that we were doing. So ultimately, pros and cons list to answer your question. And at the end of the day, just reassuring people, hey, this is a short-term situation. We'll get back and running in no time. And then having to rebuild.
Well, that's the final question. So, thank you for coming up tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a great
you too.
This is Joan Kennedy, our next candidate. Gonna happen is each board member is gonna ask you the same question as one question that's been asking everybody else. So first, let's just start with just introducing yourself, and then we'll start.
Joan Kennedy, lifelong resident of the city of Bridgeport. Born and raised here, of course, and I to all Bridgeport Public Schools. Okay, so I'm gonna take you back. Warrensville, the old Warrensville. Okay, it's higher rises now, but with Eastside Middle then. Okay, and Harding High School, graduated 1978. So that's part of my story. I love education. I love children. And right now I work at Fall Neighborhood House as an assistant teacher, not assistant, a teacher's aide. I work over there. Love them faces that I see every single day. Some of my hobbies are sports. I work out, and I also love to cook. So I have to work out. So yeah, that's pretty much me. You guys, majority of you guys know me. The one people that don't know me, that's part of who I am. Can't say that much.
Miss Catherine just said the first question.
Hello. No. Ms. Kennedy, how much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order? Well, Robert's Rules of Order has a long history. People have been using it for a long time, decades and decades and decades, for order. Says it in the rule, Robert's Rules of Order. So there has to be an order when you come to a meeting. You have to do things decently and in order. There's a decorum that you're supposed to have. There's a professionalism that comes with it. So Robert's Rules of Order is a guide for the chair and the people that are on the committee to follow so the meetings can go smoothly. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Trader?
Um, Evening. In Connecticut, charter schools are considered public schools, just like Bridgeport Public Schools. Yet they are not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts. For example, they are not required to accept the same demographic students as Bridgeport Public Schools. They are allowed to be selective in their admissions and, for lack of a better word, exclusions, resulting in student populations that have less multi-language learners or less special ed students. Two, they are not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their board meetings or resources, etc. Three, Bridgeport Public Schools must pay for their buses and special ed classes. And four, their teacher certification requirements are much less stringent. How do you feel about that? Explain why.
Okay. I was part, let me explain why. I was part of the delegation years ago that went up to Hartford to protest no more charter schools here in the city of Bridgeport. We had t-shirts and everything. And we spoke and we were saying how we did not want any more charter schools because we're all fighting for limited resources. That being said, the standards are standards that everyone should have. Teachers that are certified, so on and so forth. We all here know that what we want excellence at all times. We don't want someone just monitoring the children or what have you. Okay, so I know for a fact that the resources are very limited. Okay, hopefully with this new administration, it doesn't get worse, but it looks like it might. At the same time, again, it puts strain on our limited resources. We need to be able to take care of Bridgeport Public Schools. Bridgeport Public Schools are traditional Bridgeport Public Schools. We are the Board of Education. This is the Board of Education, Bridgeport Board of Education for the Bridgeport Public Schools. So that needs to be our focus. And the charter schools are there. We love the children because, they're here. What else can we do? The state sent another charter school here. When we went up there, Stanford was up there. Their mayor went up there. Norwalk was up there. They just gave us another one. They gave Stanford another one, even though their mayor was against it. So, we just got to keep on fighting for what we want for our Bridgeport Public Schools. Hello.
Do you understand the packing PTAs or rules on the website? Can you give me an update in how far you go with that?
Say that one more time, sorry.
Do you understand the packing PTAs or
Yeah.
rules website? Can you give me update on how far you can go with that?
Okay, in reference to the pack, my children weren't in the pack. We weren't, they weren't in the lower school. They went to a private school until 8th grade. And then my children went to basic. So I was part of PTSO. I do understand that because I was part of the PTSO, Parents Student Organization at Bassett, and we had meetings together. So we were there with the pack and so on and so forth. I helped create some of the bylaws. With that PAC, Parent Association. So yes, I do understand the PAC. Right now, I did not go on the website to see the update of it, but I know how it runs. It's run by the parents. It's for parent involvement. The PTSO, on the other hand, that was the legislature that brought it down and said, we need to have parent involvement in the high schools. So that's how that happened. And I was very involved in that in school governance council. So I do know how that definitely know how that, definitely know how that operates and how that works.
Thank you.
Mr. Spalding.
Thank you. Good evening. My question is two parts. One, please tell us what you know about the budget and what needs to be done to balance it. What cuts would you recommend to bring the budget into balance?
Okay. So reference to the budget, I've been coming to all the meetings and I've been hearing a lot of different things that have been going on in reference to the budget. The budget, this is what we go through every single year for decades. We're asking for more money. We definitely need more money, of course. That's a given on the state level and also the city level. Okay. Unfortunately, we may have to come down to closing some schools to help us to balance the budget. We have to balance the classrooms. There's a lot of work that has to be done in reference to that. A lot of work. And I am confident that it can be done. So my suggestion would be that we get to it and make the hard, tough decisions that have to be made. Unfortunately, we are right now, I believe not the last meeting before that, Budget for Finance, we were cutting, at some point they had cut social workers and different jobs, assistant principals. I don't know if that totally went through yet, but we need certain people in place. Okay. We have to have a vision, because without a vision, the people perish, and our children are going to perish with us. We need to be focused on what is best for our students and how that can happen in reference to the budget. And the budget definitely is a serious thing. I know we're in dire straits right now. We definitely have to just have that vision to do what has to be done and make the hard decisions. And that may be going to and closing some schools. Unfortunately, people don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. We have to be truthful with the people on what you guys have to do making these hard decisions. They have to be made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Diaz joining online. He's an next.
Okay.
Mr. Medina?
Yeah, pardon me. I stepped out to the room and I want to make sure I read it verbatim. So give me 2 seconds, please. So once again, in education.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just grabbing my paper because I remember that was the first words that I used. So in education, like I said earlier, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Again, in education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
Yes, students achievement. Absolutely. In this part of my life, in all my life, majority of my family is in education. My mom was in education. Her husband was in education. My sister is in education. My nephew's in education. My daughter's in education. Okay, she's graduate from Rider University with a bachelor's degree in education. She works at the same place, at Holiday Real House as a head teacher. My other daughter works at Holiday Real House as a teacher's aide. So our family is in education. And to answer your question, I love the students. I am those students. That was me in these grades that they're going through. That's me. I am those children. They are my children. I love them. We all should love them. We need to do what is best for our children. And at this stage of my life and any stage of my life, I will always advocate continually for the children. And someone needs to be here to be accountable and also want to stay on the board. We need consistency here. We need our board members to stay on the board and do the right things for the students. I'm sure everyone's heart is in the right place. Prayerfully, do what's right for the students. That's what you need. Committed people, and I'm definitely committed.
You missed that, she's friends.
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district and has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think this school district has been failing for the last 25 years? And what do you think will turn it around?
Inconsistency is the reason why we've been failing for the last quite a few years. Inconsistency, financial issues, like we were talking about, the reference, one of the questions was about the budget. We definitely need more money. Does money solve all of our problems? Maybe not, but let's try. Let's try to get some more money. I've been doing that too. Going to City Hall, advocating for more money from our local politicians. Going to the state in that too. But this is Black History Month. Guess what? There's been a long time when we didn't have money. And we know who we are. Okay? Blacks, Hispanics. We haven't had money. but we had to do what we had to do to educate our children. That is what we need to do. There was a lot of folk that were not interested in integration because they were doing fine, even though they were calling it separate but equal. We were separate, but our children were getting educated, and there were amazing things coming out of those schoolhouses back in the day when we were not, all in different schools, in all in one school. Okay, so we need to do the hard work, and I believe that can be done. And we have excellent teachers. I'm hearing that we have excellent teachers. So let's get out of being the Alliance District. Let's be people that will uplift our children, roll our sleeves up, and do the work. I homeschooled my children for the first 3 years of their life. When my daughter went to a private school, she didn't have a problem because I did what I had to do to educate her. And that's what everyone needs to do. And it can be done.
Mr. Woodson?
Katie.
Hello.
How do you feel about unions?
I was in a union. I'm good with unions. I was in a union, so I used to work at Stop and Shop. I was in the union. So I am definitely pro-union. Okay. I don't know what else to say. I'm pro-union. And there should be people to protect the workers. I do believe in unions.
Thank you.
And then your last question, how would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular, but are in the best interest of the?
Yeah. I believe it will be, it wouldn't be just me. If I have the privilege of being on the board, it will be a collective. It's a collective. There's no big I's and little U's. It's a 9-member board. Once the decision come out, they'll say, when they say on the radio, the Board of Education made this decision. It's all 9. It's all 9. So at the end of the day, the Board of Education members should be supporting the Board of Education members, and the Board of Education should be supporting the students, and do what's best for the students. If you have an error in favor of the students. If you make error in favor of the students, it's all about them, because if we don't have students in the building, we don't need anybody else. Now, do we? So it's all about the students, all about the children. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry. Was there a second part?
No, it's one part. How would you approach making difficult decisions?
Yeah.
That may not be.
Popular. Yeah, you have to have a backbone. You can't be yellow in here. You have to have a backbone. You have to do what you have to do. And if it's not popular, it's just not popular. I'm sure everyone in their lives had made decisions that weren't popular with somebody else, but you had to do it anyway. You can't be scared. You have to do what you have to do for our children, because our children deserve the best here in the city of Bridgeport.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. I need this. Have a good night now, guys.
And it is Nicole Nelson. What's gonna happen is every board member is gonna ask you one question that's been asked of all the candidates. Kind of answer those questions. But first, if you want to tell us who you are. Yeah, read you guys, please. Yeah.
Interesting about me?
Yeah.
Okay. Born in Brooklyn, New York, to immigrant parents, Jamaican mother and a Guyanese father. Later moved in my younger years to Stanford, where I was raised, school and educated. Been living here, residing here in the city of Bridgeport now for about 16 years. And been in the field of education now for over 20 years. Filled roles in various capacities. First started out as a substitute teacher. Later became a interim teacher. After school tutor. Started my own nonprofit a rites of passage program called the Kente Foundation, where I collaborated with Fairfield University School of Nursing, as well as Bridgeport Public Schools, via the Youth Power Partnership or the YPP program. On a full-time scale, I'm a case manager. I work with a specialized population of DCF referrals. On a part-time scale, I'm an adjunct instructor, previously an adjunct at UConn, Stanford campus, and now I teach as an adjunct at Norwalk or Connecticut State Community College, formerly known as Norwalk Community College. Education is my life. Education is my passion. I believe education is power, and I'm here to be that vessel of change.
And we're gonna start Miss Catherine.
My one question is, how much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order?
I'm privy to it. There is some partiality of it that I still need to understand about Robert Rules of Order. I understand that it is a tool, it is a guide for effective communication in a formal setting. So I understand the motion process, the points of order process, and the roles of the chair to ensuring that everything is done efficiently.
Thank you.
Mr. Traver?
Good evening, sir.
In Connecticut, charter schools are considered public schools just like us. Yet they are not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts. For example, they are not required to accept the same demographic of students as Bridgeport Public Schools. They are allowed to be selective in their admissions and, for lack of a better word, exclusions, resulting in student populations that have less multi-language learners or less special ed students. They are not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their board meetings, resources, etc. Bridgeport Public Schools must pay for their buses and special ed needs classes, and their teacher certification requirements are much less stringent. How do you feel about that, and explain why?
I believe that parents they can make whatever decision it is they want to make as it pertains to the education of their children. I am not pro-charter, and I am not pro-charter for the very reasons that you have listed. The practices in which charter schools utilize to select what type of student, which population of students it wants to educate and cater to it's a problem, it's a challenge within itself. And it doesn't represent equality. It is not equitable in practice. And I think charter schools takes away from proper funding sources that traditional public schools are in desperate need of.
Mr. Bennett?
Hey, Ms. Nathan, how are you?
Good.
Do you understand the packet PDSO rules on the website? Can you give me an update on how far you go with that?
Could you repeat the question?
Do you understand the PAC and BDSO rules on the website? Can you give me an update in how far you can go with that?
I know there are parent organizations, there are advisory organizations. It gives room, a safe space for parents to become involved within the school district and to provide necessary input as pertains to the education of their children. So it's advisory, they are advisory committees, as I understand it, but advisory committees that allow for parents to collaborate with the board and the Bridgeport Public Schools on a broad scale. So it gives voice to the parents.
The question is two parts. One, please tell us what you know about the budget and what needs to be done to balance it. What cuts would you recommend to bring the budget into balance?
So give me the first part again.
Please tell us what you know about the budget
Yes.
and what needs to be done to balance it.
Oh, right. So I understand that currently we are in gross deficit and something needs to change in regards to how we move forward collectively, how we move forward in terms of fiduciary responsibility and accountability with regards to this deficit. In terms of being able to move forward, I think hard decisions have to be made. Hard decisions that I'm sure none of you as board members want to make in terms of budget cuts and which positions need to be removed. But in order for this school system, in order for this district to survive, it requires a collective reasoning into figuring out what needs to be removed in order for the financial component to survive. So you don't want to remove educators, right? I'm not in agreement in terms of removing educators. So where does the removal of funding, where does that have to take place? That's something that has to be discussed and has to be worked out.
Mr. Medina is joining us online. Mr. Medina?
Thank you. In education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Again, in education, is there any particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
Okay, there's a couple. The chronic absenteeism. I think that the board as a collective and the district as a whole need to figure out a way in which it can engage parents and families and work with parents and families to figure out as to why children are chronically absent from school. You cannot learn if you are not present. So you have to, and understanding that chronic absenteeism is a current challenge, a current barrier that is taking place right now within the school district. Maybe it requires, I'm not sure, I'm not privy to whether or not all are working with the state, Board of Education in its LEAD program in terms of engaging with parents, engaging with family members, guardians, legal guardians, and figuring out a plan as to why children are absent, chronically absent from school. So that's one. And I am not privy to the demographic of the educators, of the faculty, but historically, you don't see that many male educators, male teachers of the global majority. Currently, right now, in the state of South Carolina, there is a program called Call Me Mister. And its objective, its mission is to ensure that there are more, that there is an increase of Black male teachers within the classroom. if we can implement something very similar to Call Me Mister, where you would see where children can see adult male figures in the classroom that look like them, that can inspire them, so that they would be inspired to come to school. Engage with male teachers who look like them, who can mentor them.
Thank you.
I believe I answered your question.
Ms. Betsy's correct?
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district and has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think this school district has been failing for the last 25 years? And what do you think would turn this around?
I think there are many reasons why it has been a quote unquote failing district or an unsuccessful district for so long. I think one of the reasons is that we're not getting the fiduciary support at the state level. I think that's one of the factors as to why it has been a district that is challenged in terms of its success. And I think that if we can implore at the state level and at the city level to increase its funding so that we can get the fiduciary support at that scale, so that resources are properly allocated within this district. I think that's one of the ways in which we can advance this district to a level, taking it from Alliance becoming being labeled an Alliance district to a blue ribbon district.
Mr. Vincent?
Teacher, are you a member of the union?
Yeah, at the same way, yeah.
That's okay. How do you feel about unions?
I support unions. Absolutely. Unions, they are a necessary component in terms of supporting faculty and staff. Union provides advocacy to teachers, support staff, school administrators at every scale, at every level, from salary to allocating for resources. I support union. I'm 100% union.
Final question is, how would you, and you sort of answer this, but you can ask, how would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular but are in the best interest of students?
I'm not concerned with popularity. I'm concerned for what's best for the students. Sometimes you have to make, again, whether you're talking about finances, whether you're talking about advocating for resources, whether you're talking about making cuts, the overall premise is to ensure that children are educated and that they receive the level of education in the same capacity as their neighboring school districts, in the same capacity as Fairfield Public Schools, Trumbull Public Schools, Westport. And so when it comes to the children, when it comes to the student, when it comes to their education, making sure that they graduate out of here with a high school diploma and that they can read, they can write, they can and they can perform academically on the same scale as neighboring school districts to ensure that they are college and career ready, whether or not they want to go to college, but that they have the same level of education that makes them college and career ready. That's my concern, nothing else. You're welcome.
That's the final question.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Take care.
Thanks for meeting us.
Good night.
Have a good day.
He thought,
Each time you put it on for what man? If that's not.
Our next candidate is Mel Moa. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to, each of the board members are actually one question. It's the same question that other candidates have had. Before we start, do you want to tell us about yourself real quick and we'll get started?
Right, so, story. First of all, I came here as an immigrant, $10 in my pocket. I started my life in New York. It was in Westchester, and I went to school over there. So I, back in those days in the 90s, for me, it was a different situation because I came from religious school. I was in the country I came from. So there was a whole different vision about how education carries out in the States. I went to a community college because I didn't have the means for it. I showed leadership capacity and I was able to earn scholarships out of my own effort. So I was able to transfer credits from community college. I ended up in NYU. I graduated from NYU. At some point I had like a dean's, was in the dean's list. And then I left. And I was offered a job at NYU Medical Center, where I worked there for like 4 years. And then, so all along during those years, I worked, I went to school, worked and went to school. So I know, how much effort it takes for a person to achieve their goals. Once I was in NYU, I was pregnant, so I was looking for a house. So I was like, it's either New Jersey, Connecticut, because simply New York was not affordable for me. So I came to Connecticut because I had family here. Glad that I did that because New Jersey gave me that. So then I came here and I was kind of astounded because I come from the kind of the thought of the manner how everything's carried out in New York. Like you have like the different things that you have like, oh, you have the Regents classes and you have AP classes. And over here, it was kind of not like that. So it depends on the areas where you live. So that's very disappointing. So that is. So then, okay, so you can achieve your goals if you desire, if you keep on moving. But then there's this whole thing about the school system where we don't have the teachers. We cannot absorb good people. So I think we are right now at crossroads, right? How do you absorb good people? There are so many people who are working here and they are completely burned out and then want to be here. So you have people who come from like law science, like me, law science. I'm very curious. I'm always trying to study and trying to absorb stuff. So you can, like, I've heard in the meeting, you guys are trying to attract people, based upon their skills and try to like convert them into. There's so many nurses who would like to be a teacher, honestly. So I want to be part. When I came here, I realized that a lot of things in my community needs to think they need to update. So I live in the North End. My son has disabilities. He has one disabilities. And so when I used to take him to the park, he enjoyed it. The only thing we can do was swim. That was it. We didn't do anything else. So I took my son to here. I brought him here, I think. No, I went to the other center where the mayor was. the other building. And I said, well, we need to have a park, children with disabilities. We need to have an all abilities park. But before I did that, I met with my neighbors. I reached out to the Association of People with Disabilities. I kind of I needed to get all the information I needed in order for me to soak in and try to absorb whatever I need to absorb in order to create the best plan of my community. So I actually reached out to the council people because they know about how the ins and outs of this city, and it worked out. I was able to spearhead the making of an all ability spot in the north end. And there were other parks that were coming out. They started coming out. That was during the tenure of before this mayor was yeah. A lot of parks started flourishing about, with that kind of thing. Because I feel like every child, whether it is a child with disabilities or a regular or a typical child, they need to live their life to the maximum amount of participation. You cannot just limit them. Oh yeah, you can just be on a wheelchair. You can't because it's inhuman. So that's how I saw it.
Ms. Casimir, ask you the first question.
Hello. How much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order?
That was something that I learned when I was in Girl Scouts. But I will have to read about that because there's specific things that I know, but I don't use that in my daily life, so I will have to read about it.
Thank you.
Mr. Traver? You want me to pass? Want me to go to the next one?
No,
You got it? Okay.
no, I'm just finishing my notes. In Connecticut, charter schools are considered public schools, just like Bridgeport Public Schools. Yet they are not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts. For example, they are not required to accept the same demographic of students as Bridgeport Public Schools. They are allowed to be selective in their admissions and, for lack of a better word, exclusions, resulting in student populations that have less multi-language learners and less special ed students. They also are not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their board meetings or their resources, etc. They have, and it requires us to pay, the Bridgeport Public Schools to pay for their buses and their special ed classes and needs. And the teacher certification requirements are much less stringent for charter schools. So how do you feel about that? And explain your answer.
Okay, so when did they create charter schools and what was the purpose? We're gonna start from the beginning. We're gonna scratch out everything. Why did they create charter schools? So once you go back to the point, then you have to figure out what happened and why we are failing as a public school. Because obviously it's like in public schools, I heard that the food that you give in the cafeteria, you're not free to choose or something like that. It's incredible. We need to be able to handle. That's the reason why I want to be part of this team, because in that way we can go to the point. Where did we start getting all these issues and why did they design that? Because all of these failures are by design. So that's my point. I don't know what was the point, why they created, and how come they were moving the fence, and so we are like strangled with like all these debts that we have in the school system. So just want to find out like that.
The benefits?
Hello, board. Do you understand the PAC and PDSO rules on the website? Can you give me an update and how far you can go with that?
Which rules are those?
That's a PAC and PDSO going on from schools. PAC, PDSO leaders we have.
Cannot explain it to you. I will be honest. I'm like, I'm pretty new on the educational system. My whole life has been mostly in the healthcare system. But I believe that if you have a group that with different points of view you can be able to reach to a better understanding of things. Because sometimes you can have a group that is too homogeneous and thinking in the same direction. You can't. You have to get people from different points of view to try to get a better solution to things.
Thank you.
My question is two parts. One, please tell us what you know about the budget, what needs to be done to balance it. What cuts would you recommend in order to bring the budget into balance?
All right, so I talked about that. One of the things that we realized that there's a lot of waste. A lot of waste. So, and I know there are children that need they need their food, because otherwise they won't have food in their home. I remember when I went to school, high school in New York. So you will go to the counselor's office and you say, well, I don't have any money. So how much can we pay? Well, I'll pay $1. And they were like, okay, so I will go with my tray. I will pay my $1. I'll be responsible that I am not misusing. So at the end, I'm making myself responsible. There's a back and forth. That's a good idea, I think. Because otherwise you are going to continue giving and giving, and the other part doesn't know that costs the money. I feel that's one way that I can imagine. So you have a budget. Say you have as a mom, I have $1,000 that I can only use for like, I don't know, whatever it is, groceries and electricity and everything. So if I cannot go beyond that budget. And then it's gonna be hard. You're gonna have to choose what's important. And then obviously you need to be transparent, saying, this is my goal. So help us. Because my child has a whole lot of allergies, and I'm sure that there are a whole lot of people who have children with the same peanuts and I don't know what it is. A lot of people having allergies. So they cannot even enjoy the food that the school system is giving. And I always have sent my son with his lunchbox because he has a lot of allergies. So I don't know, we have to like go line by line and try to figure out the way how we can cut expenses.
Thank you.
Mr. Medina is joining us online. Mr. Medina?
Yes, thank you. In education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Again, in education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
The only thing that that I want to do is to give something to my community. I started many years ago during the Finch administration by making that kind of trying to provide my community with a park for everybody. But at this point, I'm in my late 40s, and I want to do something in order to improve the lives of children over here, because we keep on falling behind, and that really bothers me a lot. That obviously everybody has problems and everybody comes from different walks of lives, but a mom, a person, a nurse can provide with some sort of point of view from her own experiences. A teacher can provide another point of view from their experiences, and we can get together to try to find the best solution. You know, instead of like, I don't know, me sitting in front of a TV, maybe I can come over twice a month or 3 times a month, whenever they have meetings, and try to just, you know, provide with my own experiences. And as a mom of a child with disabilities, I have plenty to give, plenty.
Ms. Benji Perez?
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district and has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think this school district has been failing for the last 25 years? And what do you think would turn this around?
But as always, you know, we have to. When I started coming, like bringing my son to the school system, I was trying to understand why these people are like not getting it, why they have to give, why these children are falling, why they don't have enough staff, you know, and so the problem is, one of the biggest problems is not being able to explain what we can give and why we cannot give you all the stuff. You know, like say, we have to create a plan where, you know, maybe we can just give you half a day. I don't know, some other solutions. This school system has been failing for a long time. And for a person who, like a mom who has a child, it's just full of problems, because you have to go to doctor's offices, you have to deal with your child's disability when you're alone at home, and then you got the stress taking them to school and to try, like, hopefully they will take care of the child, and you don't even know, you know. So there's a lot of stress. So, but then why is the school system failing? I don't think this is the only school system that is failing. I heard that Norwalk is failing too. So there's something that we are doing wrong in the school system, but I don't really know what it is. Economics? How do we absorb the best teachers? Obviously, teachers are going to be taxed money. You got to pay them well. But besides that, also the ability to support them. You know, how is it possible that it's not only this school system, but also like all the school systems that are private, also they're like shedding all that, the teachers. People don't want to be teachers anymore. So, if you have in the healthcare system, if you work hard, and then somebody's sitting there and doing nothing, it's obviously going to affect the whole system. It's going to be like, okay, I'm working and this person is not working. So there's got to be some sort of like, I don't know, good management.
Mr. Wilson?
How do I feel about what?
Unions.
My needs? Unions. My first job as a nurse was a union. A unionized hospital, Montefiore. And I found that there were like people who were not doing their job and they're still getting paid. So I don't know, call me whatever, but I'm telling you the truth. So what can we do in order to change it? You can't, I don't know. I don't really know, but I think everybody has to be, if you're coming to do a specific job and you cannot do it, then there has to be a specific pathway for that person to move on to something else, or to hire a person who is much more capable of doing that job.
Last question is, how would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular, but are in the best interest of students?
No, a lot of good decisions are not popular. It's the truth. I mean, you tell them you cared. you gotta eat healthy. They go like, no, I want to have like Fruit Loops, right? So good decisions are usually not popular. It's what it is. You have to choose want to be popular or you want to do a good decision. So that's the whole reason why it's not one person making that decision, but the whole group.
Thank you for coming out tonight. No problem, right? That's the final question. Thank you. Your first speech, so I you back. And I just said, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Next candidate is Lamont Thomas. We give you a minute to introduce yourself, and then we're gonna have each board member ask you one question that they've asked the body. So you just need.
Good evening, my name is Lont Thomas. Currently at RBT at all public schools. I just recently DSAP, special ed teacher. I'm now in the process also doing my master in social work. I lived in Bridgeport for 20 years. I have a 15-year-old son that currently go to school at Maulo, but did attend a school in Bridgeport. Pretty much sums me up.
We're gonna start from Ms. Cassimer.
Hello. How much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order?
Honestly, I don't know.
Thank you for your.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Traver.
In Connecticut, we have charter schools that are considered the same as public schools, just like us. Yet they are not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts. For example, they are not required to accept the same demographics of students as Bridgeport Public Schools. They are allowed to be selective or in their admissions and, for lack of a better word, exclusions, resulting in student populations that have less multi-language learners or less special ed students. They are not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their board meetings, their resources, etc. Bridgeport Public Schools, us, must pay for their buses and their special ed classes. Their teacher certification requirements are much less stringent. How do you feel about that? Explain.
I'm gonna be biased. My second opportunity to go to a charter school for its achievement. And I thought it was great for him because he had the opportunity to experience things I didn't get to. Smaller classes, more representation of him because being minority. So in that manner, I think charter schools are great. But I work for another public school, so on that end, I think the public school, in law, it's a law standpoint, it's tough here as for teachers. Like, the quality is different out here, but.
Mr. Benny.
Thank you. Hello, Ms. Thomas. Do you understand the package PTSO rules on the website? Can you give me an update in how far you can go with that?
Repeat that, I'm sorry.
Do you understand the package PTSO rules on the website? Can you give update in how far you can go with that?
I don't.
Thank you.
My question is two parts. One, please tell us what you know about the Bridgeport budget and what needs to be done to balance it. What cuts would you recommend in order to bring the budget into balance?
I can't speak too much on Bridgeport, but I know Mel is going through the same thing. The budget is a huge thing. It's going to affect all of us in the long run. You know, the community-wise, student-wise, the service I needed, which is might be a good thing for anyone, no matter what town or where you're at. It's not a good thing. What decisions have to be made, right? Got to figure out what's going to be cut and what's needed.
Thank you. We have Ms. Medina joining us online. You'll go next.
Thank you. In education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Once again, in education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
Yes, sir. For me, it's working in special ed, working kids with emotional disturbed. Seeing them not getting the consistency that justice they deserve, not getting the proper chance to be in gen ed class than other kids.
Ms. Bethesda?
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district and has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think this school district has been failing for the last 25 years? And what do you think will turn this around?
I think it's the community. You have to figure out what's going on in the community. That's the focus. I think if you start in the community and work your way out, be the solution to solving a lot of our problems. How do we help our parents financially, mentally? Mental thing is a huge thing. I think the past 10 years, I think the past 5 years, they've been focused on more minorities seeking the mental health, not just going to the church itself. Like, no, we need help in the mental aspect. I think once we get that, start working financial, what's the next component can help.
How do you feel about union?
Union. I like new unions. I'm in the union right now as an educator. It helps in areas I can't help in and work for. I support unions. It worked for me.
And our final question is, how would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular, but are in the best interest for students?
The things service the kids. That's what we're here for. Decisions going to service the kids the best. That's what you go for. Take the personal portion out of it. How you service these kids.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
We don't-
No. Good night.
My candidate is Nicole, but, so, we're going to. I forgot what we're doing this. We're each gonna ask you one question. It's the same question everybody else has asked. The first, just give us a brief introduction, what you're looking for, meeting.
Okay, my name is Nicole. I lived in Bridgeport, this time around, just under 10 years. I've lived here previously, as an au pair, and actually multiple parts of Bridgeport. And yeah, I'm just kind of looking for someplace to do some good.
First up, Ms. Casimir.
How much do you know about Robert's Rules of Order?
All I know is it's, basically, for meetings, it's about like having courtesy for a speaker or something like that, letting them say everything they need to say before having a response to it.
Thank you.
Mr. Traeger.
In Connecticut, charter schools are considered public schools, just like Bridgeport Public Schools. Yet they're not held to the same standards or requirements as regular public school districts like us. For example, they're not required to accept the same demographic of students as Bridgeport Public Schools. They are allowed to be selective in their admissions and, for lack of a better term, exclusions, resulting in student populations that have less multi-language learners and less special ed students. They are not subject to the same transparency rules regarding their board meetings and resources, etc. They also, we must pay for their buses and special ed classes. Their teacher certification requirements are much less stringent than ours. So how do you feel about that and why?
Overall, not a fan of charter schools because of their exclusionary practices. They also do often take money away from the school districts that the kids are being sent from. Yeah, overall, not particularly fond. I don't know if that is a popular or unpopular opinion, but I feel like there needs to be more put into the public school system.
Thank you. Hello, Nicole. Do you understand the PAC and PTA rules on the website? Can you give me an update in how far you can go with that?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Of course. Do you understand the PAC and PDSO rules on the website? Can you give an update in how far you can go with that?
Sorry, I'm not really versed in those. I can't really give you an answer on that.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
My question is two parts. One, please tell us what you know about the budget and what needs to be done to balance it. What cuts would you recommend in order to bring the budget into balance?
So what cuts I would recommend, I mean, wasn't there just like over 80 cuts already made to the budget? Personally, I feel like the deficit was created by the removal of the COVID aid as well as the money that's removed for charter schools. I mean, my recommendation would be to kind of pursue more aid, better aid, because I think instead of showing that like the school's failing, when we remove the additional aid that was brought in by COVID, that's when all the infrastructure started to fall down. I think that was more of a display of how much more the school systems in Bridgeport need versus, you know, where if they're a liability. I don't think any part of the school system could be a liability. Education is a right. It's not a privilege. It shouldn't be exclusionary.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Medina is joining us online.
Thank you very much. In education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education? Again, in education, is there a particular issue that motivated you to want to serve at this point in your life on the Board of Education?
For me personally, it comes from having a 9-year-old son on the spectrum whom I don't feel safe putting into public education. And I feel I would just continue doing myself, my son, and other children on the spectrum of the service by not getting involved at some level where decisions are being made as to what's going towards these kids, and not just kids on the spectrum, but, you know, all kids benefit.
Ms. Baptiste Perez.
Bridgeport Public Schools is a failing school district, has been failing for the last 25 years. Why do you think the school district was failing for the last 25 years, and what do you think will turn this around?
Failing is a little bit of an understatement. It's what, 161 out of 165 schools? That's pretty low. You know, I hate to be so antagonist, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Bridgeport is primarily non-white. I feel like there's been less investments made into education. Spending a little bit of time trying to get, my diploma as an adult. I have firsthand knowledge of some of the educators who, not fully supported. So I think if there can be a way to pivot the money that's being used for outside services for Bridgeport children, there's a way to pivot that back into Bridgeport and truly support the teachers and educators so that they can further their support on the children. I think that would be the best way to invest in raising the standards of Bridgeport.
How do you feel about unions?
I feel that unions are beneficial when they are proper. Because that, just like any organization, it can be co-opted, it can be manipulated. So I think unions are very important in terms of not just protecting the people that are in the unions, the employees, but also the employers. It's both ways. It does, and it does do its job when people are involved in making sure it's doing its job.
The final question, how would you approach making difficult decisions that may not be popular, but are in the best interest of students?
The best interest of students. Humility, compassion, and transparency. When I talk to my own kid, I'm not ordering him, telling him what he's gonna do. It's not my way or the highway. It's, we have to do this because of this. By the time I'm done, he's so bored with whatever I'm saying, he's willing to do it, But I believe in being over communicative at times and really driving home the point of what's going on, just to kind of involve the children in the decision making as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Next part is, the discussion part, which qualifies for executive session, so. Talk about the candidates in further detail. Their motion
Motion to go into executive session and discuss the candidates.
Second.
made by Nicole, seconded by Benjamin, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I,
Any abstentions? We're gonna go into executive session. It's 8:53. The board member talking. Yeah, sure. No. Well, welcome back. We are out of executive session. It's 9:56. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Ms. Torres and seconded by the Hennigan. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourning at 9:56. Have a good night.
I guys be safe.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Have a good night.